We're now 3 full weeks into the 2019 season, and the season is starting to take shape of what kind of year it's going to be. Unfortunately, a lot of the league's premier players like Drew Brees, Saquon Barkley, and Derwin James all have been lost at some point due to injury, while players like Sammy Watkins and John Ross are top 5 in receiving yards. It's been a crazy first 3 weeks to say the least, and while some players have exceeded their expectations through 3 weeks, others have failed them and are considered fantasy busts at this point in time. In this video, I will discuss a few busts so far and what has gone wrong for them through the first 3 weeks of the year. This is in no way a ranking of how big of a fantasy bust one is compared to another, just a list of a few so far. Before I get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first fantasy bust through the first 3 weeks of the season is Antonio Brown. While I did say I'm not ranking these busts in terms of how big of a bust they were, I think everyone can agree that he is the biggest fantasy bust of 2019. From his feet getting frostbitten outside of the country, to the helmet controversy, to calling Mike Mayock, quote, a cracker, end quote, to wanting to fight Mike Mayock, Antonio Brown had quite the Raiders career even for Raiders standards. New England then took a shot on him before more news came out about him, and he is now a free agent. AB tweeted that he is, quote, not playing in the NFL anymore, these owners can cancel deals and do whatever they want at any time, end quote. I think AB's playing days are over regardless of what he says or tweets at this point, and he is himself to blame for that. He'll more than likely finish the 2019 season with 4 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. The next fantasy bust through 3 weeks of the season is Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield. Heading into 2019, Baker Mayfield was supposed to start out hot and the Browns were going to win the AFC North, and there were Super Bowl talks coming out of Cleveland. Those kind of talks seem like forever ago, and it's been a long 3 weeks for Baker and the Browns. He has just 3 passing touchdowns in 3 games compared to 5 interceptions and just 1 300-yard game in the first 3 games, and 89 of those yards came on 1 play against the New York Jets. The Browns' only win has come against them when Trevor Siemian started, only for Luke Falk to come in after he got injured. The Browns have not looked good as a unit and will probably lose this week in Baltimore as well. The positives for Baker is he played Baltimore twice last year and threw for over 340 yards in 2 games, so he has had success throwing the ball against them. The negatives are the Ravens have arguably the best secondary in the league and played against Patrick Mahomes last week, so they should be more than prepared to face a good quarterback. Through 3 games, Baker is undoubtedly in the middle of a sophomore slump to start the year, and I hope he can get out of it, and fast. I don't think Baker looks comfortable in the pocket by any means, and that's a problem for the Browns right now, as they're 1-2 and could easily be 2 games back in the division after this weekend. Moving on to the next fantasy bust through 3 games is Vikings wide receiver Stefon Diggs. This pains me as a Vikings fan because I love Diggs, but through 3 games he has 6 total catches. Everyone knew heading into the season that the Vikings would be a more run-heavy team with Gary Kubiak coming in, but they didn't know to the extent. While Diggs had a touchdown robbed of him at Lambeau due to a very controversial Dalvin Cook pass interference call, there have been several times he's been open and quarterback Kirk Cousins just hasn't hit him. Diggs had 8 games last year with 50 yards or less receiving, and he has yet to eclipse that in a game in 2019. His numbers are definitely concerning as both a Vikings fan and a fantasy owner. What I will say is his numbers can't get worse, and that in 2 of the 3 games the Vikings have got up on teams early and haven't had to throw the ball much at all, especially back in week 1, as Kirk threw the ball just 10 times over the course of the entire game. Diggs is undoubtedly a fantasy bust right now, but he's talented enough to be able to get back on track. After all, he is coming off of a 100-catch, 1,000-yard year, so it's not like he's a bad player, he just hasn't had many opportunities through 3 games. The next player that has been a fantasy bust through 3 games is Steelers running back James Conner. James Conner ran for over 970 yards last year and had 12 rushing touchdowns and provided an additional 55 catches in the passing game. Through 3 games this year, he has only 97 rushing yards on 34 carries. He is averaging 2.9 yards per carry compared to the 4.5 the previous 2 seasons. Conner is averaging only 32 rushing yards per game compared to 75 a year ago. The good news for Conner owners and fans is that he plays the Bengals, and he had a 110-yard, 2-touchdown performance against them last year, so he has had success against them in the past. I think Conner is too talented of a running back to be in this rut for too much longer. I honestly think now is the best time to trade for him because he can only get better, and people will be trying to either dump him or get what they can for him. Conner's story is obviously incredible, and I wish nothing but the best for him. The final player that has been a fantasy bust through 3 weeks is Seahawks running back Chris Carson. For people who don't know, Chris Carson finished 2018 with more rushing yards than players like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, and James Conner, as he finished 5th in the entire NFL in rushing yards. However, through 3 games in 2019, he is averaging over a yard less per carry and over 30 yards less per game than he did last year. Carson had 6 100-yard games in 2018, but 3 of those came in weeks 15 through 17, so it is possible that Carson will pick it up later in the year, as he is clearly not producing at the time. He has had exactly 15 carries in all 3 games so far, with no more than 60 yards in a game. His longest run on the year is 22 yards, which isn't great, but the worst part is if that run is taken away from his production in 2019, he is then averaging just 3.1 yards per carry. The concern for Carson is real, but as he showed last year, he is a good player and that it just might take him some time. I don't think he'll have a great game this week against the Cardinals because the Cardinals have not been able to cover a tight end through 3 weeks, so I would expect Will Dissly to shine for the Seahawks from a fantasy perspective in week 4 rather than Chris Carson. That's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you for watching, and have a great day.